The more you try to get a handle on unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP, the easier it is to feel like you're drowning in information.
Oh, absolutely. There's just so much out there, isn't there? Videos, accounts.
Yeah, and a whole spectrum of explanations. And frankly, they don't always feel completely satisfying.
That's a really common feeling. The conversation often seems to land on, well, one of two main possibilities.
Right. Either it's some kind of advanced human tech we don't know about.
Or it involves extraterrestrial visitors, aliens.
Exactly. But what if there's another angle? For this deep dive, we've been looking into some really intriguing ideas, maybe less mainstream.
Yeah. The goal is to explore an alternative way of thinking about UAP, one that suggests the answer might be, well, closer to home.
Closer, like already here on Earth, but hidden somehow.
Precisely. We're going to delve into what's called the Ultraterrestrial Hypothesis.
Okay.
And specifically, one really fascinating part of that, the Cryptoterrestrial Hypothesis, or CTH.
Cryptoterrestrial. Okay, let's unpack that a bit. Sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It does have that vibe, yeah. But the core idea is pretty straightforward, really.
Which is?
That the non-human intelligence, the NHI, potentially behind UAP, isn't coming from, across the galaxy, but is already present right here on Earth, existing in some kind of concealed environment.
Concealed.
Yeah.
Like underground. Or maybe deep in the ocean.
Those are the main ideas, yeah. Underground, underwater, perhaps other hidden spots, too.
So when we see these weird things in the sky, or even under the water,
yeah,
the CTH suggests we might be seeing, like, inhabitants of a hidden Earth, not space travelers.
That's the essence of it. And the main source we're digging into for this paper called the Cryptoterrestrial Hypothesis Finalized Paper.pdf, it really lays out this whole concept.
Yeah.
And it points out, just like we said, that the main narrative usually defaults to human, tech, or ETs. But the paper argues that the sheer strangeness, the persistence of some UAP reports, it kind of pushes researchers to consider these less conventional ultra-terrestrial ideas.
And you can't deny public awareness has shot up recently. I remember back in, 2017, when those Navy videos came out.
Oh, yeah. That really brought it into the mainstream, didn't it?
Definitely.
It felt like a real turning point. Before that, UFO reports, well, they were often dismissed publicly, weren't they?
Totally. Brushed off. Even though groups like MUFON had, tons of reports piled up over decades.
Hundreds of thousands, yeah. But that 2017 footage coming from the military, that gave it a kind of official weight, spurred more attention.
Which led eventually to ARO being set up, right? The All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office.
Exactly. And apparently they've looked at a huge number of cases. The paper says over 800.
Wow.
Yeah. And look, ARO's director suggests most probably can be explained if they get more data.
Okay.
But there's still that subset, maybe 15 to 40 cases, something like that, that are genuinely unexplained. Still mysteries.
And it's that core group, the really weird ones, that opens the door to thinking about, ultra-terrestrials.
Precisely. That's where these alternative ideas gain some traction.
Now, this paper we're using, it mentions the interdimensional hypothesis, too. We talked about that before.
Yeah.
How's cryptoterrestrial different?
Right. So interdimensional, that suggests beings from other dimensions, maybe parallel realities, or even different points in time.
Time travelers, the extraterrestrial idea.
Yeah, that's another angle. Cryptoterrestrial, though, is different. It suggests these NHIs exist within our normal space-time, 4 dimensions, but they're hidden, concealed from us somehow.
So, physically present but unseen within our reality. The paper quotes Puthoff describing them as sequestered terrestrial cultures, existing alongside us in distinct stealth. That's evocative.
It really is. And look, the paper is upfront about this. The CTH, it's considered pretty unlikely by most scientists. Lots of skepticism.
I can imagine.
But the authors argue, and I think it's a fair point, that we shouldn't just dismiss it out of hand. It deserves, consideration. An open mind, but critical.
Okay, so let's entertain it. If we're looking for evidence, or at least lines of reasoning, that might point towards cryptoterrestrials.
Yeah.
Where do we start?
Well, one really significant thing is the growing recognition that UAP aren't just aerial. There's a big underwater component.
USOs, unidentified submersible objects.
Exactly. The paper brings this up strongly. Retired Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet wrote a white paper about it recently.
Yeah. What did he say?
He emphasized how these USOs show capabilities way beyond our own subs. They challenge our understanding of physics, hydrodynamics.
Right. I remember reading summaries. Navy submariners reporting objects moving at insane speeds underwater, making instant turns.
Yes. McGregor summarized those accounts. Objects doing things with no visible propulsion, mirroring what we hear about aerial UAP. It's startling.
The paper even gives that example from '87,
Mhm.
a New Zealand frigate supposedly followed by a huge USO.
Yeah, and the calculated speed was just mind-blowing. Nearly 3,000 miles per hour, underwater.
Faster than sound and air, but happening in water. That's
Oh.
hard to wrap your head around.
It really is. And this ties into the whole transmedium capability idea.
Moving between air and water seamlessly.
Yeah, maybe other mediums too. It's a key reason the term shifted from UFOs, aerial, to UAP, anomalous. It's not just about the sky.
The paper also mentions some, well, stranger comments from people involved in these talks, like Representative Luna using interdimensional after the Grush briefing.
Right, deliberately avoiding extraterrestrial.
And that claim from Ron James about Pentagon people fearing demons from hell, that's quite a leap.
It just highlights the sheer confusion, doesn't it? The wild range of interpretations people are grappling with.
It really does.
And the paper brings Master's time traveler idea back in here, too,
Yeah.
suggesting maybe there's an overlap with cryptoterrestrials.
Like maybe there is from the future hiding out now.
That's one potential link, yeah. It gets complicated fast.
Okay, so back to the core CTH idea. NHI in our space-time, but hidden. Underground seems like a major focus in the paper.
It is. It's one of the primary proposed locations.
And you mentioned earlier your own thinking on this has shifted from like 1% probability to maybe 10%. That's a noticeable jump.
It is, yeah. For me, the increasing focus on the underwater stuff, combined with the fact that we still don't have that smoking gun for an extraterrestrial origin for the really baffling cases, it just makes me think, well, maybe we should look a bit more seriously at the possibility of a hidden terrestrial intelligence.
The underwater angle really does seem key for CTH, doesn't it? Oceans are so vast, so unexplored.
Exactly. And Representative Mike Gallagher even threw it out there in 2023, said maybe UAP are an ancient civilization that's just been hiding here.
Wow, that's pretty direct, straight up cryptoterrestrial suggestion.
It is. And this idea, of hidden places within the earth, it's old, really old. Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth is just the famous literary version.
And then the paper digs up Richard Shaver, the I Remember Lemuria stuff from the 40s.
Yeah, that was a big, if strange, modern popularization of the subterranean civilization idea, claiming these ancient races built underground cities and retreated.
Very controversial, and most seen as fiction or delusion.
Oh, definitely. But it tapped into something, kept the idea alive in sci-fi and, well, fringe circles.
The paper even notes some really extreme claims, like biological tests on recovered bodies showing links to human DNA.
Right, that's attributed to a supposed CIA source in one of the references. A very big claim, if true.
Huge, but needs serious verification, obviously.
Absolutely. Approach with extreme caution, but it's part of the tapestry of ideas around CTH.
Okay, so if we're considering hidden civilizations, maybe ancient humans, maybe something else native to Earth, what does our actual understanding of Earth's history say? Could something like that just vanish?
Well, the paper makes a really strong point about how little we actually know. The paleontological record, it's incredibly incomplete.
Like the primate fossil example they use. We've probably only found a tiny fraction of all primate species that ever lived.
Exactly. It shows how much of life's history is just lost. Missing pieces everywhere.
And it's not just the super deep past, is it? Archaeology keeps throwing curveballs, like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, those Indus Valley cities, lost for thousands of years.
Right, or Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. That site just blew up our timelines for complex societies and monumental building, pushed it back thousands of years.
And that weird potential structure in Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
Maybe 10,000 years old.
Yeah, or Gunung Padang in Indonesia, though the dating there is heavily debated.
Yeah.
But the point is our picture of the past is constantly being redrawn. It's not set in stone.
And Earth itself is just ancient, 4.5 billion years.
Yeah.
Our detailed understanding covers such a tiny sliver of that time.
It's almost nothing in comparison. McPhee wrote beautifully about deep time, how easily evidence gets erased by geology. Erosion, subduction, gone.
Which leads right into that Silurian hypothesis the paper mentions, Schmidt and Frank's idea.
Yeah, the mind-bending idea that the geological record is just too coarse, too low resolution to necessarily preserve obvious evidence of a past non-human industrial civilization.
So one could have risen and fallen millions of years ago, and the main signs would be wiped clean. Or just leave really subtle traces.
That's the argument. Maybe just weird isotopic ratios or strange sediment layers that we wouldn't even recognize as artificial. It means the lack of obvious alien factories isn't proof they never existed here.
It really challenges assumptions. The paper also briefly notes things like weird Mars photos.
But rightly cautions about pareidolia, seeing faces in rocks.
Sure, and that mentions the Alaskan Triangle. Lots of UAP reports and disappearances there, too. Anomalies seem to pop up everywhere.
It just reinforces that there are still huge mysteries about our own planet, and the paper says we should be humble about our biological knowledge, too.
Right, we haven't cataloged everything alive now, let alone in the past.
The number of undiscovered species is likely enormous. Maybe 20% of mammal species are still unknown, many potentially living in hidden places, like underground.
And then there's the whole Bigfoot or Sasquatch enigma. Still debated, never fully confirmed or debunked.
Exactly, it shows the limits. And then you get these weird UAP reports, like that jellyfish UAP Corbell shared recently.
Yeah. What about it?
The paper points out it looks strangely similar to some old historical depictions of odd things in the sky.
Interesting. That links into recurring myths, right? The paper talks about analyzing legends, like flood myths.
Yeah, the hermeneutic approach. So many cultures have great flood stories, or tales of lands sinking beneath the waves.
Like Atlantis.
Atlantis is the classic, yeah. But Nunn and Cook showed many coastal peoples have ancient stories about land loss, maybe recalling real sea level rise after the Ice Age.
And the paper brings up things like the Yonaguni structures off Japan, possible underwater ruins, or the whole Mulemuria myth.
Right. Now, a global empire like Mu is a huge stretch, very speculative. The paper clarifies CTH involving a lost human civilization is usually more limited.
Just that some advanced group might have existed and then hidden, maybe underground.
Exactly. Which brings us to those weird, out-of-place artifacts, O parts.
Objects that seem too advanced for their supposed time period, like the Antikythera mechanism.
Yes, that ancient Greek astronomical computer. Still amazing how sophisticated it was. Or the Baghdad battery, possible early electric chemistry.
And the schist disk from Sumeria, that weird, precisely made thing.
They're all puzzling. They don't quite fit the neat timeline of technological progress we usually assume.
Could they be leftovers? Hints of a lost tech base? Fits CTH1 or 2, maybe?
That's the connection the paper draws. If a civilization had advanced tech and then lost it or hid it, these could be traces.
And there are more examples, right? That granite box in Cairo cut so precisely, Conrad Haas's 16th century rocket designs.
Yeah, or even older, more debated things like those pipes in China or the Russian screw in rock.
These things, even if some have conventional explanations, they still raise questions, don't they? About what we don't know about the past.
Absolutely. And Coulthard suggested intel communities are interested in these objects, hinting maybe there is a hidden history there.
Okay, so practicality. Could a whole civilization live underground? Permanently?
Well, humans go pretty deep already. That Mamponing gold mine is like 4 kilometers down. The Kola borehole went over 7 miles deep.
Heat's a big issue, though, right?
Huge issue at those depths, yeah. But the paper notes that Russian sect survived underground for almost 10 years in their bunker.
And life does adapt. The paper mentions lots of hidden mammal species underground.
Exactly. Parsons et al. Pointed out rodents, bats, many species thrive underground. Complex life finds a way.
And culturally, the idea of underground realms is everywhere. Sheol, Shambhala.
So many myths and legends across the globe. People have even searched for entrances. Soviets, theosophists.
Quests for inner Earth. Never found anything verifiable, though.
No confirmed portals, no. But the persistence of the legends is interesting in itself.
Like Mount Shasta in California. The whole Lemurian city idea underneath it.
Yeah, Telos. That myth has been around since the late 1800s, really took off later, and Shasta is known as a UAP hotspot.
Really? Reports of things coming out of the mountain.
Lots of anecdotal reports, photos of strange lights or objects near the peak, plus some weird disappearances in the area. It all feeds the mystique.
This connects to folklore too, doesn't it? The paper talks about fairies, the Longivi, subterranean beings.
It's striking, the parallels. Fairy lore often involves underground kingdoms, strange lights in the sky, abductions. Sounds a lot like elements of CTH, doesn't it?
It really does. And the idea that magic in those old stories might just be misunderstood technology. Clarke's third law.
That's the interpretation suggested. And scholars like Kirk took these traditions seriously, not necessarily literally, but looked for the underlying basis.
And philosophers like David Bentley Hart challenge purely material explanations, suggest unseen realms might be possible.
Right. And belief in fairies or elves isn't just ancient history. It persists today in places like Iceland and Ireland.
That argued modern UAP stories are basically updated fairy tales. And Jacques Vallée's Passport to Magonia.
A classic. Vallée drew direct lines between UFOs and folklore, like those airship sightings in the 1890s.
Yeah, encounters with weird aeronauts. Stories felt dreamlike, uncanny. Very similar to fairy encounters.
It makes you wonder if the phenomenon itself is ancient, and we just interpret it through our current cultural lens, technology now, magic before.
The paper also mentions Operation High Jump, Antarctica, Admiral Byrd.
And those rumors of encounters with an advanced race in inner Earth?
The missing diary is likely fake, right?
And mostly debunked, yeah. But there were still persistent rumors, some reports of strange aerial stuff during that expedition. It adds to the lore of hidden places.
So, beyond folklore, what about actual claims of hidden bases today? Underground, underwater, even on the moon?
These are definitely out there in the UAP discourse. Claims about bases in Antarctica, Dulce, New Mexico, under the oceans.
Gallaudet hinted at underwater possibility.
Yeah, and others have talked about specific locations or sightings near potential underwater sites. And then there are the moon base theories.
All lacking solid public proof, though.
Right. Highly speculative, but part of the conversation around ultraterrestrials.
And it comes back to how much we don't know about Earth. The oceans, especially. That weird golden orb they just found in Alaska.
Perfect example. We're still finding completely unknown things down there. The deep ocean is a massive potential hiding place.
And UAP that look like marine life. The jellyfish thing again. Could that hint at an underwater origin?
It's another potential pointer, yeah. And the idea of looking for artifacts on the moon makes sense, too. Things could survive there longer.
Okay, so pulling this all together, this deep dive into the cryptoterrestrial idea, the paper argues we should take it seriously, right? Even if it's less probable than ETs.
That's the core argument. Don't dismiss it. Keep it on the table as a potential piece of the puzzle.
And the paper breaks it down into 4 types.
Yeah.
To make it clearer.
Exactly. 4 versions of CTH.
Okay.
CTH1, remnants of an ancient advanced human civilization now hidden.
Right.
CTH2, a non-human species that evolved on Earth alongside us or before us, now hidden.
Okay, terrestrial non-human.
CTH3, extraterrestrials who arrived long ago and set up a hidden base here. So, ETs, but resident ETs.
Got it. Still technically ET origin, but long-term presence.
Yeah. And CTH4. This is the weirdest one, non-corporeal, magical cryptoterrestrials. More like the beings from folklore, intelligence we barely comprehend.
That categorization seems useful, apparently similar to how Colonel Carl Nell framed ultraterrestrials.
Yes, there seems to be a convergence there, a need to structure these alternative ideas.
And each CTH has pros and cons for explaining UAP, I guess.
Definitely. CTH1 and 2 avoid the problem of interstellar travel that ETH has. But then you have to ask, why stay hidden for so long if you're that advanced?
Good question. And CTH4, that magical one, really pushes boundaries for science.
Hugely challenging. But the paper suggests maybe something that strange is needed for the really bizarre UAP reports. And again, the folklore connection is there.
So all 4 are pretty far-fetched, maybe.
Oh, absolutely, compared to conventional explanations. But the paper argues they're considered because some UAP data is just so weird.
While most investigations focus on ETH.
Understandably. But it's wise, the paper concludes, to keep all lines open, including these CTH possibilities.
So the bottom line, CTH might be improbable, but given the mystery, it should remain a consideration. Like that Scientific American piece said, we need broader perspectives.
Exactly right. Keep the scientific rigor, but also keep an open mind when faced with the truly anomalous.
Well, this deep dive into the Cryptoterrestrial Hypothesis.
Yeah.
Wow. It's definitely giving me a lot to think about.
Me too.
And I imagine for you, our listener, this probably raises more questions than answers, which honestly, with a topic like this, that's probably how it should be, right?
I think so. Our goal wasn't to, solve it all, but to look at UAP through this different lens, using the source material we had to encourage that broader perspective.
So here's something for you to chew on. Considering everything we've talked about, the USOs, the legends, the OPARTs, the gaps in our knowledge.
Yeah.
If there is some hidden intelligence here on Earth, what does that mean? For our history, for biology, for our whole place in the cosmos? And what happens if that presence stops being hidden? What kind of future is that?
Those are, profound questions. Definitely food for thought.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So keep exploring, keep thinking critically, but also keep that mind open when you're facing the unknown.
Well said. There's still so much we don't understand.